Chapter 21 Northern Star. The dampness of the lake had begun to permeate the very stones of the citadel, bringing with it a creeping, persistent chill that seemed to settle in the marrow of one's bones. It was in this atmosphere of cold suppression that Arthur sat, his eyes tracking the intricate, blood-soaked borders of a Merlin map, while Gaius, possessing the detached, clinical efficiency of a man long accustomed to the frailties of human flesh, worked a silver needle through the fresh lacerations on Elun's shoulder. The room was dominated by a silence so heavy it felt structural, an almost physical weight punctuated only by the sharp, rhythmic snap of the gnarled pine in the hearth and the precise, metallic snip of the physician's silk thread as he bound her injury. She sat behind the velvet curtain again, listening to the working of Camelot, not through Arthur, but through Arthur, who commanded it all. Perhaps now he would accept her word, not be so ready to fight her when she had his interests at heart. However, what was to come would make her heart sink and her spirit slower to nothing. It was Merlin, whose voice was low and patient, who began to convey the worry of the citizens of Camelot to Arthur and, as he spoke, made it all the worse. The rumors have begun to take on a life of their own, Arthur, evolving with each retelling in the lower town, Merlin observed, leaning as he was against the scarred oak table, watching the firelight carve deep, uncertain hollows into the room's geometry. The city people are talking of a terror within Camelot City, of a Saxon warrior come to steal their children. They have gone to petition your father. Arthur shifted his gaze toward the figure on the stool, seeing a lead with a sudden clarity, a person with the iron will and expansive pragmatism of the Saxon North grafted onto the ancient, lyrical, and bone-deep stubbornness of a Briton. And, she was a she. Which is why he wondered why Bayard had made such a petition to his father to recover her. A warrior of the invaders who bleeds for the invaded, Arthur mused, his voice dropping into a register of contemplative unease. It is an improbable story, even for a place as riddled with historical contradictions as Camelot, and it becomes even more fantastic when applied to a person who insists, with such tiresome regularity, that she is merely a drifting blade for hire, a ghost with no past and no future beyond the next coin. At this, Elun jerked her head and dashed aside the curtain, standing in cotton trews and undershirt, ignoring Gaius's protest that he had not finished. And it was the prince who has caused this much work on my behalf, he protested. But his words were lost over Elun's rebuke. Had swords been available, there might well have been need for his services again, this time for Arthur. I bleed for those who cannot defend themselves, Pendragon, because the world is full of men like you who think life is a game of chess played with real blood, she said, her voice brittle with the immense effort of maintaining her defiance. There is no need to dress a simple necessity in the heavy, suffocating finery of legend. My presence here is a matter of survival, not a performance of some grand, weaving destiny. The wyvern, remember? She added. Perhaps I should not have bothered. At this, Arthur pushed the map away and got to his feet. From Merlin's viewpoint, they looked like two stags about to charge, neither one of them prepared to back down. Survival rarely dictates such a total, reckless lack of self-interest, Arthur countered, stalking over to Elund until his shadow swallowed her small, bruised frame. You have accepted nothing but fresh wounds and the sharp, unforgiving end of my father's tongue for your troubles. So tell me, why would a druid child speak of the blood of the high seats if you are truly the insignificant nobody you claim to be? Elun's gaze darted toward Merlin before returning to Arthur's searching eyes. The secret of her parentage, the knowledge that she carried the blood of King Bayard himself, weighing on her like a leaden shroud. The boy is a creature of the old ways, she said, her tone level despite the frantic, visible pulse at the hollow of her throat. He weaves enigmas because he finds the mundane world of steel and tax records too small for his imagination. He sees a princess in a scullery maid because it makes the world feel more like a story. I have passed the age of believing in coincidences, Aled, or whatever you are called, Arthur whispered. the use of her warrior name emphasized so heavily it became the only thing in Gaius's chambers for a moment. My inquiries in Rati were met with a wall of royal silence from Bayard, yet his captain spoke of a mistake that should have been drowned in the river at birth. "Are you the child?" he pursued. "Are you my enemy in waiting?" "I am no one, but a foundling of the river mud." She shot back. "I was raised by a farmer who saw a child, not a political asset, and I have no desire for the heavy, blood-stained crowns of my father's house. I want only the right to exist without being a piece moved across someone else's board." The escalating confrontation was interrupted by a sharp, urgent rapping at the heavy oak door. Sir Leon entered, his face set in the grim, shadowed lines of a man delivering a message that tasted of war. "Sire, a Merlin delegation has arrived at the gates," he announced. "They demand the immediate surrender of a Saxon fugitive, one they claim is responsible for the murder of the Dragonkin and the theft of royal property. They seek her return for a public execution." Arthur did not look away from Elund. He watched the flicker of genuine, cold terror cross her face, followed instantly by the hard, glassy resolve of the doomed. "Tell them," Arthur said, his voice ringing with a sudden, icy clarity, "that we have no such fugitives here. Inform them that they will find only a dedicated guard of this citadel who was wounded in the service of the crown, and if they wish to challenge my word, they may return with a siege train." As the door closed behind the knight, Elund remained frozen. "That is a dangerous game, Arthur," she said quietly. "My father is a man of long memories and short patience. You are risking a war for a girl you barely know." And so, in her words, Elund betrayed both her sex and her heritage. The flicker of satisfaction on Arthur's face only lasted for a second, but it was there. "Perhaps," the prince replied, an echo of a genuine, weary smile touching his lips. "But I cannot very well let them hang the only soldier in Camelot who knows that particular Saxon leg sweep. It would be a terrible waste of tactical genius. It is a dirty, peasant's trick," she muttered, her shoulders finally dropping an inch. "And you have far too much dignity to ever get the footwork right." "We shall see about that," Arthur challenged, the air between them returning to its usual state of competitive friction, though now underscored by a new, unspoken alliance. And the room suddenly became one of four people rather than the two who had dominated proceedings for the last 10 minutes. Merlin exchanged glances with Gaius, who shook his head as much as to say, "Don't get involved." Yet, Merlin thought, and he was sure his expression betrayed this, "We are involved." He had seen the invisible threads of their lives knotting together with a permanence that no king or envoy could undo. The peace of the realm was now tied to the survival of a girl who was a bridge between two worlds that had spent centuries trying to burn one another down. Elund confirmed, not taking her eyes away from Martha's own. "It's what my family called me. I prefer Rayled." 88,888,888. The night air atop the battlements was biting. A cold wind whipping off the bright Chiniog mountains tasted of iron and impending snow. Elund stood motionless, her silhouette a soft shadow against the moonlit stone. Beside her, Arthur leaned heavily against the crenellations, his usual golden aura dampened by a heavy, suffocating silence. Earlier that day, a rider had arrived from the north, from Joyous Gard. The news had rippled through the court like a poisoned draught. Lancelot, the man Arthur had once deemed the greatest of them all, had not remained a wandering knight. He had claimed his lands, married the Lady Elaine, and now had a young son, Galahad, growing tall in the rugged northern air. Elund's words had been true. Now they were true for everyone to see. For Arthur, the blow was twofold. He had lost a brother in arms to a domestic peace he couldn't yet grasp, and more bitterly, the lingering ghost of Gwen's affection for the knight had been laid to rest in a way that left Arthur feeling like a fool for his own jealousy. "He didn't even send word," Arthur said, his voice raw. It was a rare, quiet moment on guard duty, the rest of the citadel asleep. He just vanished into the mist and built a life. A wife, a son. He did what he had to do, Arthur, Elund replied, her voice uncharacteristically soft. "Lancelot was never meant for the court. He belongs to the wild edges of the world. Just like me." Arthur turned to her, his eyes clouded with a vulnerability he only ever allowed in the dead of night. I confided in you, Aeled. I told you I thought he was the better man. I thought Gwen. I thought her heart was his, and I was just the crown she was obligated to respect. He let out a sharp, self-deprecating laugh. Now I find he has moved on, and I am the one standing still, clutching at shadows. I feel betrayed by a man who did nothing but live his life. Elune looked at him, not as a guard looks at a prince, but as a sister looks at a wounded brother. The resentment she usually wielded like a shield slipped. She saw the heartbreak etched in the set of his shoulders. "You aren't standing still," she said, stepping closer. The acerbic barbs were gone, replaced by a grounded, gritty empathy. "You're building a kingdom while he's building a home. Both are heavy tasks. And as for Gwen, she is here. She is loyal. But don't punish her for a choice Lancelot made hundreds of miles away." Arthur looked at her, truly seeing her in the moonlight. "You're a strange creature. One moment you're trying to trip me in the mud, and the next you're the only one who doesn't treat me like a wax doll." "I don't have the patience for wax toys," she muttered, though she felt a pang of genuine sorrow for him. "And you're too sturdy to break, even if you are an idiot about women." The moment, if that had been it, was shattered then by the sound of boots on stone. Merlin appeared at the top of the stairs, looking frantic. "Arthur, you need to see this." Another message arrived, but not for you. Merlin glanced at Elune, his eyes wide. "It's from the north, from Lancelot's wife, Elaine. She's sent a token for Elune." Elune froze. She took the small, weathered parchment Merlin offered. Inside was a simple piece of braided river grass, the same braid Lancelot used to make for her when they were children playing on the banks of the Haythron. "Sister," the note read, "the boy grows strong. He has your fire. My sword stays at Joyous Guard, but my heart remains with the foundling of the river. Do not let the Pendragon extinguish your flame." Arthur stepped closer, reading over her shoulder. The tension between them returned, but it had shifted. It was no longer just about skill in cutting remarks, it was about the shared weight of their hidden lives. "He calls you sister," Arthur whispered. So the rumors were true. "You are the Saxon foundling he protected, the beast who once ravaged the land." "I am," she said, her voice hardening once more. "And he is my brother in every way that matters. If you have a problem with my blood or my kin, Arthur Pendragon, you just need to say it now." Elune reached for Lancelot's blade. Arthur, however, was looking at the braid, then at the woman who had saved him 3 times over. He saw the loneliness she carried, a mirror to his own heartbreak. "I have no problem with your blood," Arthur said, his voice regaining its royal strength. "But I have a problem with you keeping secrets that could get you killed. If Arthur finds out Lancelot of Joyous Guard is the brother of a mercenary serving in his guard, then we'll both be at the end of a rope." Elune finished for him, her eyes flashing with a return of their usual fire. "So I suggest you stop moping about your heart and start worrying about your head. We have work to do." The dawn began to grey the horizon. Arthur straightened his cape, the heartbreak of the night tucked away behind the mask of the prince. He looked at Elune, a grudging, resentful respect shining in his eyes. "Get some sleep, Aeled," he commanded, though the edge was gone. "That's an order." "I don't need my best guard collapsing from exhaustion because she was too busy feeling sorry for me." "I wasn't feeling sorry for you," she lied, turning to head down the stairs. "I was just bored with the silence." As she walked away, Arthur watched her, the braid of river grass still clutched in his hand. He realized then that while Lancelot had found a home in the north, he had found something far more dangerous and vital in the halls of Camelot, an equal who wasn't afraid to bleed for him. But she didn't walk for long. Merlin's boots hammered across stone, and his frantic movements caused Elune to stop. She waited for him to catch up with her. Behind him, Arthur hurried to them both. "Bayard's captain has come to request an audience with my father," Arthur told her. "I told Leon to tell him to bring an army." He glanced at Elune, and then into the depths of the dawn far below. "And he has. Your father's captain has come to take you back to Mercia." 88,888,888. Elune looked back from the depths, and then between Arthur and Merlin. When neither of them answered, she demanded to know, What did you tell them? That there is no say here. She stared at Arthur, her anger at Bayard's demand momentarily replaced by a stunned silence. You're lying to a king for me. That's treason, Arthur. Your father would have my head, and yours, for protecting a Saxon, particularly one who has ravaged Camelot's lands. For which I am sorry, she added. Then we'd better make sure he doesn't find out, Arthur said, a rare, genuine smirk appearing. Besides, I can't have you executed yet. You still haven't taught me that leg sweep you used in the armory. It was effective in a dirty, mercenary sort of way. It's a Saxon trick, she muttered, a small, involuntary smile tugging at her own lips. You're too noble to learn it properly. Try me, Arthur challenged, the acerbic energy returning, lighter now, but no less potent. As Merlin watched them, he saw the threads of fate tightening. Arthur and Elund. They were clashing, breaking, and building something that Uther Pendragon could never understand. Go back to Morgana, Arthur told Elund. I have a plan. And you'll share it, I trust? She demanded. But Arthur said nothing, only grinned again. Later that morning, and Morgana was brought to Gaius complaining of a headache. Elund had accompanied her, and slipped Gaius the root of a flower that she had seen Arthur add to Morgana's drinking water and had been too slow to stop the lady from drinking. We have guests, Merlin whispered to Gaius as Elund helped Morgana onto the bed she had, until recently, herself occupied. And I think they're going to be the death of our peace and quiet.